like, what's your prefix? Fire
Everybody
chief?
says chief. Yeah, Chief Dennis Ray, but truthfully, Dennis Ray is fine. Sometimes I forget I have a name because I'm called Chief so much. It's so nice to be called Dennis for a change. Even if it's Dennis the Menace, it's still fine. It's what I grew up on. Harassed by kids all my life. I think that's why I turned out to be who I am for Dennis the Menace all those years.
What a good show, though, huh?
Oh, yeah, man.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to Here for the Health of It. Hope you guys had a great Christmas break. We got a treat for you today. We have a fire chief, Chief Dennis Ray, with us. He's going to tell us all his stories. Before we get into that, I want to talk about this hat that I have on right now. Did you notice this? It's called Butter Golf.
Ooh.
So Sam Jardine, my cousin, played hockey with a guy who started this company.
Are we sponsored by Butter Golf?
I want to try to get sponsored by him, and I want him to send me more hats. So if you're listening to this, check out Butter Golf and maybe send him a message saying that he should sponsor us.
Boom.
Because we're Columbia's hottest and fastest growing podcast. All right, let me tell you about Chief Dennis Ray. He's retired fire chief as of last Friday, I believe.
December 30th, 2022.
And 27 years in public safety, 31 years in fire service, state, local law enforcement, and you're the owner of Palmetto Executive Services, which is a consulting company in Lugoff.
You got it. And I heard this is the hottest podcast going on.
This is the hottest podcast.
I had to be here as the fire chief.
I know. You were saying before you felt a little pressure because of the big name guests that we've had in the past year.
Man. If you look through your podcast list, it's like, how can I compete with some of these people? But I'll do my best.
All right.
I'll try to throw a war story in here or there.
So you gave my kids they were at the office one day and you gave them what is this called? What is
challenge coin?
A challenge coin. And you said that they were staring at you because you're in uniform, which every kid probably does stare at you when you're in uniform. And my youngest, my 5-year-old's been carrying it around with her everywhere. So can you tell us the importance of a challenge coin like this?
Well, first of all, now that I've retired, those I have plenty of those to give away. So if anybody needs any more of those, I've got those because it's got my superintendent title there, the Fire Academy. But challenge coin is something in our profession. In military, I think it started, but we're paramilitary in the fire service. So that is it's our recognition. It's just a way we can recognize folks. And if somebody does something special for us or means something special to us, we'll take those coins and give them out. And I have a significant collection of them that just from all over the world, and especially country in South Carolina, folks give those. So it's pretty cool. It's like a collector's item among each one of us as professionals, and we'll share it to each other. And some of them are more symbolic than others and more meaningful than others. Even the president has his own challenge coin, and different folks. The governor has his own challenge coin, and different people have different ones. So it's pretty cool to be able to take that and give those away. Of course, I love giving them to kids. I mean, a lot of people, they like giving them dignitaries, and I do too. And, I like connecting those, but I feel like reaching out to our kids, anything we can do to just let them know, as firefighters, we love our kids and inspire them, to be one of us or, get into public safety somehow. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A lot of folks look at our uniforms, they think we're police officers, and I've served in law enforcement for years. And law enforcement tends to be a little more intimidating than the fire department because, the job that they are. And a lot of parents don't realize that. They don't take the time to really share with their kids, the importance of our public safety folks. So taking that coin and giving it to our kids, it really lightens them up and allows them to realize, hey, we're here to help you. Yep. If something happens, don't run from us, come to us. Yep. And that makes a difference.
Well, and I've also heard, and tell me if this is a thing here, this is a thing in Canada, where if you have one and you're at the bar, you can challenge someone. And if they don't have their coin on them, then they have to buy drinks. If they do have their coin on them, then you have to buy drinks.
That would not surprise me. I haven't heard that yet, but I'm sure a firefighter in Canada probably
started that. I'm trying to bring that to
I would about guarantee you there's a bar that's called the Odd House in Emmitsburg, Maryland. It's right across from the National Fire Academy. It's Emmitsburg, Maryland. Beautiful campus, gorgeous place. Everyone should go there. The National Firefighters Memorial is there, so it's open. The public can come in and see it. We take a lot of classes there. But there's a place called the Odd House that's right across the street, and that's where those types of stories normally start in the United States. Yeah. That's an Odd House story. Yeah. So I cannot confirm it, but certainly won't deny it, especially in our professions.
That's good.
Nice. So tell us about your journey to become a fire chief. Like, how does one become a fire chief? And then, or do that first, and then I got to follow up.
Yeah. So I'll take 27 years in 2 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. So the 2-minute version, I started out in telecommunications as a dispatcher. We call it telecommunications operator, basically dispatching fire, EMS, law enforcement. That's where I cut my teeth, and that started this retirement thing. I didn't care about retirement. I was in the state retirement system then. And I started as a dispatcher, decided, I want to be a volunteer firefighter. So in 91, I started volunteering in my local fire department. And that started that clock of firefighting experience back in 91. And I still volunteer even with them today. I'll do that till I just physically can't do it anymore, I'm sure.
And you just decided you wanted to volunteer, or you were like, I'm kind of bored, I just want to go fight
Dad,
fire?
just like most people, it's your family. My dad drugged me to call. He'd say drugged me. I was excited. I wanted to go, and I'd sit in the truck with him, and I'd ride to calls with him in his pickup and sit there and watch him through the windshield. But it started there, as the volunteer and be able to get on. And then I said, I think I want to do this law enforcement thing. I went and got a criminal justice degree, and I said, I feel like I want to do law enforcement. So Camden Police Department, South Carolina hired me. I started as a patrolman, kind of cut my teeth in law enforcement there. Wanted to work for State Transport Police. That is our commercial vehicle enforcement unit for South Carolina, works hand in hand with the Highway Patrol. Got hired on. They called me, said, we have one opening in the state, and it's up in the Rock Hill District. 6 counties. We work counties. And I took that job, probably one of the best jobs I ever had. The most fun, dealing with truck drivers. I mean, unreal. Great stories there to share too. But went into that, and then got promoted to the Highway Safety Office. And I worked the Highways or Dieways commercials you see on TV, Sober, Slammer. We coordinated all of those. There were only 2 of us, and we basically served as law enforcement liaison. And then got a phone call from a board of commissioner of my local fire department, not my volunteer department, but the paid department in Lugoff, and said, would you be interested in becoming our fire chief? And I was like, no, not really. I've been a volunteer all these years, but I like the law enforcement thing. And lo and behold, he stayed on me for a while, and I went and interviewed for it and ended up becoming the local fire chief. I had some grant writing background. I'd fought fire with these guys and gals for years, so they knew me. So it was a great fit. I did that, and then my last gig got called up and was hired as superintendent of the fire academy over at South Carolina State Fire. So ended on the state level, began locally, and then ended on the state level. So it's been a great ride.
Do you think it was your great voice that got you there? I feel like you have like a fire chief voice.
I don't know if there is a fire chief voice. Yeah, I've heard those. Let me tell you, there's some times I've had to use my voice because firefighters will definitely push you like a lot of folks. But no, it's just one of those things. You just have a desire to do it. It is not for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll get into it. Probably our biggest nemesis that we deal with is stress. Probably the biggest thing we've had to deal with from a health standpoint. Yes. It is incredibly beyond description stressful. And every career choice that I have been blessed to have and be a part of has been incredibly stressful. When you think even starting as a dispatcher, someone's having a heart attack and you just realize that person didn't make it. You were the last person to talk to them. Or your police officer, which you see all the time coming in and out of your office, is now getting shot at or is in a high-speed pursuit. Your heart's beating 90 miles an hour and you're in this concrete bunker for 12 hours.
Yeah.
Deal with blood pressure issues since I was 18. And it began with even going back to then saying, man, I really did not handle stress as good as I could have. Flash forward to 2015, we had the floods.
Yep.
The floods of 2015, it was our 1,000-year flood.
Yeah.
I was fire chief then of Lugoff, and we basically became an island. We lost every road coming in and out of Lugoff. We became a floating island. People were coming in off of I-20 trying to get to Florida, and we're like, well, you're coming from New York. What are you doing in Lugoff? And they're like, well, we can't go down 95. It's shut down. So they were sending people our way, and they were trying to cut down 601. Of course, it's underwater. And to hear my firefighters on the radio saying, we're going in the water, we're going after these folks, they're tying each other with rope. We weren't ready. I mean, we did the best we could, but we weren't ready for that kind of flood. And the stress of that, to hear your folks is just tremendous. So it comes with the territory, something that a lot of folks don't understand.
That's what I was wondering. So like, for the listener, what exactly does the fire chief do, say, during something like that, or just in general? Like, what's a day in the life of a fire chief?
The bugle system is how we operate in the fire service. So the more bugles you have on your collar, the more rank you have. And of course, the top rank in the fire service is the fire chief, and that's 5 bugles. Assistant chief, 4 bugles, and it goes down from that. You start off as a lieutenant, you have 1 bugle, so maybe running a shift. So depending on your rank and your bugle, is what your responsibilities are. And it can vary from different shift operations to calls to incident command, whatever it may be. My day-to-day responsibility was more administrative. I was the one dealing with the county councils. I was the one speaking in front of county council, asking for a tax increase or maybe a fee increase, or maybe talking about a particular ordinance that we needed, a burning ordinance or a code, fire code, something of that nature. It was a lot more administrative. Every now and then the fire chief gets to go out and have what we call fun. You may get to command an incident or, run a show, so to speak, but it just didn't happen a lot because you have officers that are company level officers that handle a lot of those things. If they're doing a good job, you let them do that. So from a fire chief, it is a lot more political. It is a lot more public information, dealing with the media. I did a lot of on-camera interviews, dealing with the media a lot, and which was a great partner of ours. Love working with the media, probably one of my favorite things. A lot of fire chiefs kind of like roaches, when you turn the light on, they all scatter like firefighters. Nobody wants to be in front of the camera. I was kind of the opposite of that. I look at you, either tell them what you want them to say or they're going to find something you probably don't want them to say.
Right.
So I would rather give them the information, and public information was just so much fun. So as a chief, that was a big part of it, was the politics, the public information, running all your meetings, managing your budget, which is always a challenge. So a lot of administrative things and that. And then every now and then you get to have fun, which goes back to my volunteer thing. That's where I get to have fun. That's where I have to suit up. That's where I get to run into the burning buildings. That's when I get to rescue folks, administer oxygen, drive the truck, pump the truck, get to do the cool stuff.
And so I'm assuming at some point you saved a cat from a tree.
Oh yeah, that is like the that's actually a hot topic, believe it or not, right now in the fire service. So there are my friends throughout the nation that say, this is ridiculous. Why would we ever? There's never been a skeleton of a cat in a tree.
Right.
All right, it's never happened. That cat will eventually come down. Well, let me tell you, if that's Mrs. Smith's cat, and that cat stays with her, and that cat is that important to Miss Smith that she would call you, you get up there and you get that cat. That was just, as a fire chief, that I'm very bulldogmatic about that. If that's what our customer, who is our we call them Miss Smith, but our customers, and if they're that concerned that cat needs to come down, then by gosh, we're going to go get that cat. And a lot of my compadres, a lot of my fellow firefighters think it's funny and silly and we should never be doing that. They don't see the importance of that. But looking back, and you see, if that was you in those situations, listen, some folks, their animals are their family. I mean, it's like a family member, and some people, that's the only family they have left is their families. Right. And that's literally like their grandchild sitting up there in that tree. And I mean, that's crazy for some people to think, but that's reality. And if that's what our customer wants us to do, we do it. And the fire service historically is the one you call when nobody else knows what to do. So if it's a law enforcement thing, it's pretty clear cut. If it's a medical thing, you're going to call an ambulance. If it's, whatever the situation is, if you're having trouble at the rec department, then you're going to call the rec department for a ball field or something like that. Fire department's kind of that fit where we really don't know who can deal with this. There's a snake in my basement. And Department of Natural Resources don't deal with snakes, and Special Services, the dog catcher folks don't come deal with the snakes, but call the fire department. Maybe they'll come out, and we've removed snakes and crazy things. So, and we take care of each other. It is a brotherhood, sisterhood, so it doesn't matter. I can go to Canada right now, walk in any fire department, tell them who I am, and I would be welcomed as one of them. Yeah. I could break down on Interstate 20 in Darlington County, and I could call the fire chief and say, Chief, I'm broke down, man. Can you send somebody to help me? There will be help there, without a doubt. So we realize that among ourselves. We have to practice that with our customers.
Nice.
I'm sure I'm thinking about that, and maybe it's just because I wasn't meant to be a firefighter, but I don't think there's a dollar amount that you could get me to climb a tree and get a cat. I would say absolutely. So I'm assuming there's people who have said I'm allergic to cats, but also the idea of going up there and they just scratch me in the face or they just lose their mind, or I go all the way up and they just jump down on their own. I would just lose my mind.
I have seen some. We have not had experience. We have a ladder truck. So the last two that we have actually went to that I can recall where we actually went and helped, said we just took our ladder truck and parked it in the yard and stretched it out, and the ladder truck does the work. And then all you do is climb up there, and you have your firefighter gloves on, you have your firefighter helmet on, you have your gear on like you're going to fight fire, and that cat, they don't know you. I mean, they're going to scratch the mess out of you, but we do wear our protective gear, to have that. And normally they'll jump down and they'll go straight to the owner and everything's cool. And then the next day you get the call and guess what? Cat's back up the tree again, So
you've been attacked by a cat?
I have not personally, but my staff has.
People.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. But again, that's one of the things that you prepare for, and you pretty much know what to expect.
Yeah.
You know it's coming out. But of all the dangers that a fire chief has, let me tell you, I am not concerned about my firefighters getting hurt by a cat. That's not on the top of my list. Falling off the ladder, maybe helping helping the cat, maybe because we didn't do something properly. That may be, but yeah, not on the top of my list for sure. But but it happens. I mean, we do get some serious things. It used to be years ago. Like I kicked back to 91, maybe before 91. You know, it used to be. You put the wet stuff on the red stuff. That's what our job was. You become a firefighter, right? You just put the wet stuff on the red stuff, right? It makes sense to all of us, right? It's so much different than that now. It is remotely. We are an all hazards department, which means we could be dealing with flooded waters today. I mean, it's no telling what we could be dealing with. Flooded waters today, you know, it could be, like you say, rescue the next day. We could be actually running a fire. We do so good with fire prevention now that the actual true fires are so much lower, but the medical calls are so much higher. Yeah. Well over 80% of the calls that the National Fire Service runs is medical. Wow. We get there first. We get there normally before the ambulance, and we will do basic life care, basic life treatments to keep that person alive until the ambulance gets there. So there's a lot of medical responses now, which a lot of people don't understand that. They think a firefighter where you put the wet stuff on the red stuff, but it's so much farther than that now. It's mainly medical and all hazard stuff.
And people aren't getting lighter these days either.
Oh, no, that's true. Well, they're not getting lighter. The houses aren't being built any better. You know, they're definitely where they're set up, and the faster they go up, the quicker they burn. That's what we kind of tell folks. You know, faster they go up, the quicker they burn. So the houses aren't being built better from a fire standpoint. So we have to deal with that. And then folks are storing so much stuff in their houses now. I hate to use the word hoarding because that's probably not the most appropriate, but high piled storage, making it very difficult, not only for us to get to them, but then to try to extricate them out. Yeah. We have had some that well over 600, 700 pounds that we have basically taken the side of the house out and had to remove that person, bed and all, from the side of the house. I mean, it's gotten that bad. So it is unique situations.
How do they move?
Unique situations. They don't.
Yeah. Really?
Those people don't. Very sedentary.
Is there a lot of those?
Very sad situation. There's a lot more between the overdoses that we deal with and a lot of the overdose situations, and then as well as the overweight and the hoarding situations and the high pile storage. It is very difficult in a lot of calls that we go to. And of course, when you talk about dead weight, you use that word respectively. When you're lifting somebody from dead weight, that is a lot more difficult than people think. And now you're on the second floor. You've got to get them down the stairs. Yeah. You know, they're never on the first floor. They're never close to the door. They're always in the worst positions. But you got to treat them. You got to get to them. You got to take care of them. Even if somebody doesn't take care of themselves, you know, you got to take care of them.
So how many calls a day does an average station get?
Varies greatly.
Yeah.
So you go to Horry County, is probably the number one running department in South Carolina. They'll knock out 7,000 calls a month.
Wow.
They will top 22, maybe, I don't want to speak on behalf of Horry County, but Chief Tanner, he knows me well, and he don't mind me speaking. Matter of fact, he shared this with me. They'll be around 23, maybe even 24,000 calls in 1 year. And they're fire and EMS, so they're a combined county-wide service. You've got the city of Myrtle Beach, you got the city of North Myrtle Beach, you got the city of Conway, you got these smaller departments, but everything else in Horry County is all consolidated, and they run massive amounts of calls. Then you may go to a more rural area. They may have 150 calls a year, in your more rural areas. So it depends on the geographical area, how rural they are, depends on industrial growth, residential growth, and it's just incredible. The folks, the influx of people that are moving to South Carolina, especially our metropolitan areas. In South Carolina, Horry County was expecting a little over 300,000 people to move to Horry County by 2025. They're well over 280,000 last I heard in 2022. Wow. And now we're in 2023. Here recording this January 2023. So they're going to be knocking out in 2023 well over 300,000 people that they weren't even projecting to be there till 2025. So you've got to provide services for those people, which costs money. And you got to have people to do it. And as we know, today's workforce is so incredibly competitive. You know, people love to be firefighters, but then they get to be a firefighter and they find out they're running 80% medical calls, and they're like, this is not what I signed up to do.
Right.
You know, this is medical stuff. I didn't want to be a nurse. I wanted to be a firefighter. And they don't realize it's changed. The culture's totally changed. And Blockbuster Video, you know, you either change or you become irrelevant.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works.
Sure.
So it is a challenge, and those calls vary.
I was wondering about that. Is there a need for firefighters, not firemen anymore, right?
Correct. Yeah. Firefighters. Yes.
Is there a need for more firefighters? Or is that a industry that there's already plenty of people going into it?
Yeah, we're going through the same situations a lot of folks are. Very challenging workforce. We do. There's many openings. We're recording right here in the city of Columbia. So you're under the city of Columbia Fire Protection in this particular place we're recording today, and they have massive amounts of openings that they're struggling with. It is just so difficult to not only recruit but also retain people because it's so competitive in other markets. You can get your CDL license and go make so much more money, and it's so much safer than what you're doing, putting your life on the line, you know, and you're making $45,000 a year, and that's fantastic money. I mean, I was making in the 20s. I was like $23,000 when I first got into law enforcement. You know, that was good money. You know, it was like, man, this is great. But it's not competitive now. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult, and the demand is huge. Again, I go back to the all hazards things. While the fires may be down, our calls aren't. The call volume is still there. Sure. It's still the medical, your wrecks, your crashes, and things seem to be getting more severe. Our weather events and things that we have, you know, when you put a lot of people in a smaller area and then you get a major weather event or you get a major wildfire that backs up and comes through, you know, now you've got all these people you've got to deal with, and you got to get onto it quick. So it definitely takes a lot of people, and we're still hurting as many other industries are.
And there's got to be some things that drive every firefighter crazy. And in South Carolina, I feel like the people are notoriously bad at pulling over for fire trucks. And I've lived in a few places, but you just drive down the road just saying, I can't believe that person is driving in the left lane, or that person sees me going fast and they try to hop right behind me and just ride my tail at 100 miles an hour to get wherever they're going quickly. What's that look like, and how has that changed? Yeah,
but probably that's one of the most challenging things is the public's misinterpretation of who we are and what we do. They watch a lot of things on TV. They watch your Chicago fires, and they watch all of these things, and it's just not realistic. While it's great for entertainment, they see that, and they come to my area like Kershaw County where I live, and they have a house fire. And they expect the truck to be there within 2 minutes. They expect a battalion chief and 2 ladder trucks and 4 engine companies and, you know, all of these people showing up, rescues, and I mean just people on top of people. And they show up and you get 1 fire truck with 1 volunteer, maybe 1 or 2 paid staff that's coming from the other side of the county to help them. And you might produce 5 on a really good day, 10 people for a house fire. Where here in Columbia, you may have 30, 35 people for that same house fire. So it's a different thing, and I think it's the expectation. Now, taxes, you know, are much cheaper in certain areas of the state, but you're sacrificing the money for a lot of those services. So you're not paying as much for protection, but you're also not getting as much. But as long as you know that expectation, you're okay. But when you're expecting 35, but you're paying for 2, that's where it's frustrating for the firefighters because, you know, the public has to understand, you know, there's a trade-off for that type of stuff. And it's not just you get what you pay for, because that doesn't even happen sometimes, you know, based on call volume. But a lot of that does flow into that. And just like you were talking about on the highways, you know, we have a wreck on the interstate. Usually, very seldom, it's the initial crash that's the biggest issue. It's the crash that happens because nobody's paying attention down the road. It's what we call a secondary crash. So what we have to do, the first truck comes in, and they're the ones that's cutting the people out of the car. They're the ones that's giving medical care, whatever. We bring a second truck in that is kind of turned sideways and pushing traffic away, so our crews are protected. So if somebody crashes into them, they're not paying attention, they're going to crash into that second truck. Well, the average public comes around, man, why are they wasting money? Why are they bringing 2 trucks out of here? It's just a wreck. You know, we're wasting gas money. You know, they could have kept that second truck there for another call. They don't understand why that's done. So a lot of it's just a misunderstanding, and that's up to us as fire chiefs to communicate with our community. You know, in Lugoff, if there was ever a ribbon cutting at a new business, there was a fire truck there. There was a fire crew there, and I was there if there was any way to be there, because I want to get that message out and be able to share that to, just like what you were saying, end some of that frustration.
And I think, and this may be in Canada too, they would have a secondary vehicle driving with the fire truck, and they would take pictures of the license plates of people who wouldn't pull to the right, and then they would all get tickets in the mail afterwards.
Oh, that's
Canadians.
Which I kind of like.
This figured out, right?
And it drove me crazy there because it was like, well, you're just, you're hiring an extra person to just go hand out tickets. But then I moved here where nobody pulls over, and I'm like, we need a bunch of tickets so that people, when they hear a fire engine, it's not a cue for them to go faster to outrun the fire engine.
Right.
It's the cue for them to pull over to the right.
I wish there's a way we could simulate everybody sitting on the side of the interstate in a real life situation and see what you're experiencing.
Yeah.
You cannot turn your back on. So you're working on a patient that's dying in front of you. You've got to get them extricated. You have this golden hour that we all heard about. So you basically have an hour to get them advanced life care. So that means you've got to get to the scene, extricate them, get them in the ambulance, get them on a helicopter, get them to a trauma center within an hour, which sounds like a long time, but it is not. It goes by so fast. So you got all this going in your mind, and you can't turn your back on traffic.
Right.
The moment you do, somebody's going to do something crazy because what you're just saying, they're not paying attention. So it is constantly a battle on that. If we could find a way to simulate that and get people out there
like you're in war
to
zone
understand
almost.
it, you would never, ever fly through a work zone or an emergency scene again if you knew that. But it's all about education. And folks, everybody's got somewhere to go. And the worst thing you want to see is your GPS pop up red on your way home from work, or you're going somewhere and you're like, oh, this is ridiculous. Why are they blocking this road? Or one lane's blocked. I mean, why are they doing this? And you don't realize it's to protect those people that are serving those people injured. But to the uneducated person, is very frustrating. Like, this is why it's backed up. They've got this lane blocked off.
Yeah.
So we understand that. And from a logistical standpoint, we try to get that opened as fast as we can, especially here in Columbia. You shut down one lane of traffic, and I mean, it's nightmare. It's gridlock.
Right.
And that backs up all your other secondary roads, which creates other issues. So it can be interesting. And again, from a chief level, it's about educating folks, which these podcasts help. Folks will listen to this podcast, and I'm sure there are people that, with all good intentions, probably didn't pull over for that fire truck coming behind them. They're like, I can make it a little longer. They're not coming as fast as I think they're coming, or a police vehicle or whatever, or may not get over into the far lane, when they're going around a scene, not thinking that firefighter could get pushed out by an explosion. The hose could push them out, whatever it may be. And now next thing you know, you can't stop in time.
Right.
So these podcasts help. So we appreciate helping get that word out.
I had a question about volunteering. So it's the only profession that there is volunteering, in a sense that they're like in the action, correct? And what does that training look like? Because in my small hometown, there's just we do like a whole festival for volunteer firefighters, but I never understood what is the process for that and who can be involved in that.
It is, once again, it goes back to the agency is very local driven for that process. How you become a volunteer and what those needs are, it really depends on those local areas. A lot of your metropolitan areas don't have volunteers anymore. They got to the point where nobody was running the calls. The volunteers kind of fell out. They all have jobs.
Yeah.
Like me, before I retired in December, I was in Columbia in my office, and I'm a volunteer firefighter. And while I love to be there, I can't leave my office in Columbia and be effective volunteer in Kershaw County. It's just too far. So more people are working. They're not just working single jobs. They're working multiple jobs. So as you lose your volunteers, you have to supplement that with someone. The counties and the cities and the special purpose districts in South Carolina, they found out a way to fully fund law enforcement. You see very few volunteer law enforcement.
Right.
They found a way to fund EMS. You see very few volunteer EMS. There's some rescue squads out there that are still very faithful and dedicated, but they found a way to do those. Now we're getting to the point our volunteer fire service has been so effective, so cost efficient for so many years. Think of how much it would cost to pay to replace that volunteer with a paid person with salary, benefits, all of that, times, say, 120 volunteers in a county. It's just unbelievably expensive, but folks are having to do that because they're forced. Other more rural areas aren't experiencing that significant growth yet. While they're being challenged and they're being tasked, they're not in that desperation like some of your metropolitan areas where they've kind of gotten away from it. But it's nice to see even departments like Columbia here in the city of Columbia, South Carolina, they have volunteers that are still out there, especially in these outlying departments that may not have as many full-time firefighters. Kershaw County, for instance, where I volunteer, they're supplementing now with some full-time firefighters. The volunteers aren't going away, but it's given us help.
Yeah.
And I don't have to leave my family cooking a steak at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, for a power line down somewhere where a full-time firefighter can handle it. Now, if a house is burning, obviously I'd leave for that, but it lets us triage those calls and kind of decide a little bit more where we're needed. So it's good seeing that supplement, but the volunteers, and they're desperately needed in a lot of places and will continue to be. Red Cross is struggling, United Way is struggling. Any volunteer organization that you talk with, they're struggling. So it's not just the fire service, but you mentioned it. It's hands-on.
Yeah.
It's a significant amount of training to be a firefighter. It's many hours to be a firefighter, and it's constantly being up to date because everything's changing. We're all hazards. So if you don't stay up to date on what these houses are being built of and buildings are being built of and stuff, so when it catches on fire, how to approach that and how to deal with that, it could definitely be a problem.
Because I imagine there's a physical fitness test involved to even to go to the next step, right?
Correct. Most fire departments have a physical. We have to pass a firefighter physical every year. Those get all the way into the 12-lead EKG stress test, to where you have to do that pulmonary test. You have to do sight test, hearing test. All of those things fall in. We have what's called the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association standard. So we have a standard, national standard, by which what a firefighter consists of. In South Carolina, that is completely under the authority of the fire chief to decide what the training standard, what the physical standard, what the qualifications are going to be a firefighter in his or her department. So literally both of you could walk into a local fire department. That fire chief could say, congratulations, here's your gear, here's your stuff, go do great things. Now, obviously they wouldn't want that liability, but just from a discussion standpoint, they have that authority in South Carolina. Now, they would take the liability of that should something happen. So as a fire chief, that again falls under those responsibilities, making sure the people we have performing jobs are qualified for those jobs. It does not mean every single firefighter has to run into a burning building, but it means whatever that job they're doing, they must be qualified and trained to do. So if they're just running medical calls, and that's what this firefighter's doing, they're just running medical calls and then providing support services during an actual fire, then that's fine. They have to be qualified and trained before they're allowed to do that. That falls under that fire chief's responsibility to make sure those guys and gals are ready to do that.
And 30 years ago, I'm guessing it was mostly guys that were in the fire department.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it's shifted now, it seems like, quite a bit. How have you navigated the dynamic? So if you're working a 24-hour shift, you have guys and girls basically staying in the same place, and then there's probably fitness levels that historically, I don't know if I'm even allowed to say this, but that generally like a 250-pound guy is going to be able to yank someone out of a house faster than a 140-pound female. So what does that look like, that dynamic?
Yeah, I think a lot of our females have really made us males look bad. I mean, bad. They have really shown. Oh, yeah, they have really shown. We have recruits, as I shared, I was superintendent of the Fire Academy, State Fire Academy, and we have an 8-week recruit school where you come in and basically you have nothing to full NFPA Firefighter 2 standard in 8 weeks. It's a very intense program. It involves a lot of physical fitness. It has a lot of mental demands. It's very physical. And they have performed incredibly well.
Cool.
Incredibly well. Nice. As we know, genetically and physically, for the most part, with few exceptions, the male has been given genetically, a more stronger body, so to speak, from the muscles, from the just the way we're created.
Right.
Yeah.
So they automatically, right out the gate, for the most part, have a deficiency they have to make up, and they understand that. If I'm going to be a firefighter in the fire service, I have to be able to perform. So now we're getting to the point where the gear that we have is being manufactured with a female cut. Used to be our females had to wear a male cut fire gear, really? Right? There was no gear for females. It was, you just get fit for a male set of gear, and obviously that fits different. So that was a challenge right off the bat. A lot of unfair challenges for having a lot of your local fire departments, all they have is male bathrooms with urinals in them.
Yeah.
Because that's all they ever had. And now You get your female firefighters in here, which is welcome with open arms in our profession, and now you have to address that.
Yeah.
And a lot of your older buildings now have to be retrofitted and stuff. And again, not that it was any bad intent whatsoever. That's just the way it was. And now you have to change with the culture and grow with that. So I think as far as a profession, it's been very, very well done as far as adapting. And that is a big challenge. It's not only bring our females, but minorities in as well. When we go to a school and we go to our kids and we talk about fire prevention, they should be looking at people that look like them. Mm-hmm. That's a relation. That's a fair thing to do. And why a lot of our minorities and our females don't want to join this profession, it's a constant challenge, because we try to reach out and you try to do those outreaches, but you either you desire to do this profession or you don't. And that's a huge challenge that we've gotten as a fire chief. Again, you not only want diversity, that's important, but you want inclusion.
Yeah.
To me, that's even more important, because we've got a job to do, and our citizens deserve, when we pull up, we should look like them and we should perform like them. And regardless of your sex, regardless of your gender, and your race, all of that should fall in line. There's a job to do. Definitely. But some people struggle and have more challenges with that. But I would definitely say, especially looking at our recruits and looking at some of the female firefighters that I've had the pleasure of leading, they have definitely answered the call and jumped right up in there and done it. They realize they're saying, even males, we realize there's limitations we have. Yeah. And it may not be physical. There may be some mental limitations that we have, such as claustrophobia.
Emotional.
Emotional. Yeah,
Lack
man.
of empathy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Randy's not saving a cat. You got to send him.
I'm absolutely not.
He said he is not climbing. He is not climbing a tree over cat. So you may have another one that would jump right up on that, and take off for that. So
you never walked in on any hanky panky between male, female in the fire. You have?
No, I haven't. No,
all the TV shows, they all have that.
A lot of romance in the fire
all
world.
on the bed of the hose bed, right?
Yeah.
You got the hose bed and all that stuff.
You got the fire pole.
We had all of our fire pole. Yeah, there's still some of that.
Thought about the fire pole.
Insurance companies really don't like those, and I'm sure that's part of the reason as well, right? So they're kind of getting away from the fire pole, but probably for a number of reasons, as you said. But no, a lot of fire departments do it a different way. Some folks have different sleeping quarters for females. Other departments, they all come together. They're all in one big open room. I've always said, if you're going to do the hanky-panky thing, you're a whole lot likely to do it if you have your own room versus you're in the bunk room with all the guys and gals all together.
Right.
So I've always said they all need to be, all there together, because, again, it's one job. It shouldn't matter. You're there for a business. But you've also got the other piece where you got some wives that are not very happy that there are other females sleeping in the bunk rooms with their husbands. So now you're dealing with the emotional pack or part of that as well, and you just kind of have to work through that. But we got a job to do. That's the main thing, is you're being paid to do a job. You're going to do it professionally. We're going to have exceptional customer service, and you cannot miss a beat. You've got to be on your A game at 2:00 in the afternoon, or 2:00 in the morning, rolling out of the bed. And I don't care, what your position is or what your thing is. You're there to do a job, and you got to do it professionally. And that can be a tough challenge, more so for some than others.
Were you married when you got into firefighting, or were you a single guy trying to
not originally? No, when I first got in it, I was single. I was one of those volunteer firefighters that started. School was out. We'd get out of high school. We go straight to the little volunteer fire department, like I say, same one I'm volunteering with now. We'd shoot basketball, and we're just dying for that pager to go off.
Yeah.
We carry these little pagers on our side, and you get a tone on it, and it'll let you know what the call is and what type it is. And we're just, we're ready. We would spend the night sleeping on a couch. There was no beds in the volunteer fire department, just couches. Nobody stayed there full time. Oh, we'd spend the night on the couches just waiting for it,
Just telling all the local ladies that you're a firefighter.
Yeah, people coming by, man, wanting us to make calendars and all that stuff. Man.
Did you ever do a photo shoot?
No, never did.
That would have been great if we had an old one to put on.
Had great opportunities for that, but no, we never did. I'm glad, because those types of things come back and haunt you, right?
Oh,
yeah, they show up kind of like a picture now. You never know when they show up.
So you would never take your your uniform and just wear it out to the bar or something.
No. Well, the funny thing is, you get so tired of wearing that stuff, and it seems cool, but then you do it every day. And it's like the last thing I want to do is go out in my uniform. You know, I would work law enforcement days. A lot of people would carry their gun in their badge. You know, it's a cool thing. Wear your blue jeans, go to Walmart, put your gun on your side and wear your badge. You know, that's cool. You know, you're a police officer. I could care less. When I got off work, I took my duty belt off. I locked it into my spare bedroom, especially when I got married. I'd lock it up in my spare bedroom in there, and I didn't want to pick it back up until it was time to go to work again. Right. You know, it just gets to that point. And there's a thing called compassion fatigue that is very real in our profession. And it's basically to the point where it's just another call. It's just another page. I'm getting paid to do a job. I'm going to do a job. And it's called compassion fatigue. And it's something that we teach at the Fire Academy and something that I preach a lot especially to new fire chiefs to be watching out for. You should be treating every single call as if that's your family member. Right. And the moment you get to the point where you're not treating that as a family member that you're going to, you really have to do a check to say, am I experiencing compassion fatigue? Because in public safety, it is very, very easy to do that, to where, you know what, I'm not going to become emotionally connected. Yeah. You know, if I become emotionally connected, it's going to be a mental toughness on me, and I just don't want that. So I'm going to disconnect and, you know, just show no empathy whatsoever and just treat this. And you can't have that. You got to have a collective, healthy balance, you know, when you're responding to those.
That's interesting. I've never heard compassion fatigue used like that before. But I think even in the chiropractic world, I've felt that where
looking at x-rays,
you're, or even like someone will say to me like, oh, I had migraines 10 days a week and now I don't have them anymore and my life has changed. And, you know, they're so excited. And I'm like, cool. Next room.
Yeah, next one. That's right.
And then the next person will say something too, like, oh, I wasn't able to pick up my kid and now I can play with my kid and I'm so happy and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right.
Yeah. Well, we forget how impactful what we're doing really is. So in your business, how impactful you are on the wellness of people and their health. In the fire service and law enforcement and EMS and all those things I've been fortunate to do, how impactful that is on people's lives. Yes, it's just another call, and yes, we got to perform just as good as we did on the other one, but gracious, it's just you're making such a great impact. To be able to do that, and that's important. You know, firefighting is what I do. It's not who I am. That's probably the most important part. You know, there are times you have to cut it off and be with your family. There's times you got to cut it off and say, you know, for my mental health, you got to stop. And as a volunteer, it's like it never stops because you're never off duty. That pager goes off all hours of the day and night with people in need. Whereas if you're paid, you work your 24 hours for the most part, 24 hours, and you got 48 hours off or whatever that shift is to kind of decompress, to go do another job or whatever. Volunteers, you know, some of them, they're getting beat up 5 or 6 times a day, constantly running calls, and it can weigh on you. And it's no mistake that divorce is pretty significant in our profession because they put the profession before their family, and it really hurts them. Suicide is a very real thing. The mental health is a very real thing. There are calls we go on that people just don't get over. You will see some things. There are things I have seen that I hope no one on the planet ever has to see. To see the human body destroyed in some of the ways that I've seen it destroyed. It's the thing you just come to understand. You have to shed that, you know. And I mean, you've got to be able to deal with that, process it, talk to people about it. You know, we're killing this misnomer now that it's not okay to talk about when you're not okay. You know, it's okay to not be okay. And mental health in our profession is so incredibly important because we realize our suicide is crazy rates, the divorce rate and families being torn apart. There's nothing in this profession worth losing your family over. Right. And I preach that to all of our new recruits as much as I can. Never forget that. When you retire, a lot of these folks are going to be gone, but your family is what you're going to have there with you.
And can you just talk to your chiropractic experience a little bit too? Because I know mental health is a big thing, but then physically taking care of your body is a big thing too.
Yeah, we get beat up, so it's no surprise. You know, you put on 110, 120 pounds worth of gear, and that's dry. It gets much heavier once it gets wet. And I mean, that stuff's right on your lower back. It's pulling you back. It's not made for any type of, you know, back health whatsoever. No. I mean, some of the things we go through, going into confined spaces, we take a lot of hits and bangs and beats. Feel like I've been in an NFL football game sometimes, at least college football game, you know, after some of the calls you go in. It's important, you know, it's important to do that. And We look at skin cancer is really big in the fire service because we're exposed a lot. Wow. We're 9% more likely to contract cancer as a firefighter, 9%, which is a huge number compared to the rest of the population. We're 14% more likely to die from cancer as a firefighter because there's all these things. We're in the sun all the time. So you get the melanomas, you get the skin cancer, you get prostate cancer, everything that we are protected from, it's still absorbing in our skin as we sweat. So I wear a protective hood that protects my neck, and I have a coat and a helmet, but in that hood, it's soaking up all of these carcinogens, all that smoke, all of those things. Well, it's soaking into my skin. So all that preventative screening we do, the blood test, the physicals we do, all that, you try to be on the front end of it because it's probably not if, it's when we contract cancer or some type of cancer, we have to deal with. Well, that's at the forefront, and we hear that, and a lot of firefighters don't take that seriously, much less chiropractic and taking care of your body and all these other areas. If you're out of adjustment, the difference that makes in your just quality of life is unbelievable. I mean, just I can see when I come in and get adjusted, literally I can see within just a few minutes, I already feel better, obviously, but my performance level from putting that gear on and being able to do the job and to even from the mental health aspect of it, my worst part physically is the back of my neck. That's where my tension lies, is in the back of my neck. And just that one adjustment makes a huge difference, to do that. Convincing others of that is almost as hard as convincing them for cancer screening and protective. Yeah,
taking care of themselves. I feel like it'd be amiss if we didn't talk a little fire safety. Is stop, drop, and roll still the primary thing if Randy's on fire? Or is there a new thing that's out there? Like, I've heard of like throwing a blanket on them, or like what are some fire safety tips?
Well, your chances of dying from smoke is so much bigger than dying from fire. That's probably the first thing. Gotcha. So, yes, that is a legitimate concern. Say you get gasoline on you from filling up your lawnmower and all of a sudden it ignites and you are on fire. Stop, drop, and roll is by far. You don't have time to grab a blanket. There's no time to look for anything. You get on the ground, you roll and put yourself out. I mean, sometimes that's what happens. So that's very, very realistic, and it's still very real. However, statistically, you're more likely to die from the smoke than anything else, probably in your home, in a commercial building, probably when you're asleep. And that's why smoke alarms are obviously the number one life-saving tool, the cheapest number one life-saving tool you can get. Check your smoke alarms. 10 years is the maximum. So a lot of people have smoke alarms, and I change my battery and I test it, but it's 15 years old. Right. Well, the sensors are bad in that point. Most fire departments put those up for free. Not all, but most of them do. So folks that can't afford those, just reach out to your local fire department. They'll put those on. But smoke is your number one killer. So you've got to have early detection and be able to get out of there. So knowing an escape plan out of your house, that's safety. We had 93 so far this year, 2022. We've had 93 people die. Oh, wow. From fire deaths, which is a big number. We average about 100. In South Carolina, we're right around that 100. So from a safety aspect, that's 93 people that I can tell you in all confidence, had they had early warning to get out of that situation, they could have escaped death. Not in all cases, but in most of those cases, they could have had it. Smoking is the number one cause of fire still. Cooking is like number 2. Electrical is like number 3. So those are basics. I'll flip this on you from a safety aspect. 1,056 people died on our highways in South Carolina in 2022. That's preliminary. We'll have more. Unfortunately, some folks will pass in 2023, but it'll go to 2022 numbers. So, I mean, over 1,000 people. Think of how many people that is just from the day. You're 12 inches from death every day you go out here on these highways.
3 people a day.
And you see, we talked about how crazy people drive. It's just careless how insensitive people are to how precious life is, that when we're dealing with, even we don't realize that through compassion fatigue and others, how precious life really is. And we see death almost on a weekly basis in our line of work. Unfortunately, that's just what we do. And then you've got 1,100, almost 1,200 people died in 2021. It was our biggest year ever in South Carolina. Coming out of COVID, people were traveling more, and we had almost 1,200 people die on our roads. So it's dangerous coming from the highway safety time when I was there. You realize that's important. That's a lot of people that would be here had they taken preventative measures and learned a lot, to keep themselves safe.
Is it a seatbelt issue or a drunk driving issue, or where would you put the all these deaths categorized?
Yeah, all of the above. You can't single anything out. Without a doubt, seatbelts are a huge contributor for that, not wearing your seatbelts. Understand that seatbelt, it's not a freedom thing, and I understand that. It was for me for years. I'm not wearing that stupid thing. You know, I got the right to wear it, not wear it. Well, we know it's the law, but take the law piece out of it. Every car that is manufactured, every safety device in that vehicle is built around with the understanding that the occupants are going to be belted.
Yeah.
Your airbag becomes a catapult because the manufacturer who built that car and or vehicle, SUV, truck, whatever, they installed that airbag with the understanding that the occupants are going to be restrained. If you're not restrained and the airbag goes off, it catapults you through the windshield. So where people would have lived, the one device that was there to save them and the airbag actually made their fatality even worse or made their survivability even less because they were not restrained. So it's more than I'm just not going to wear my seatbelt because, you know, the thing aggravates my neck or whatever it may be. You just short-circuited every safety device that the manufacturer put in that vehicle for you. So that's the rest of the story that comes with that. So impaired driving is certainly big. Aggressive driving is certainly big. You know, you can name them off. And all of them, when you take all those statistics, all of them play a part into that. And the bottom line is nowhere where you have to go is so important. It's worth your life. I don't care where you're going, what you're doing. You know, nowhere's more is worth you losing your life over. And from a highway safety aspect, that's hard to educate folks because we all have places to go and we all need to get there. We want to go from point A to point B. We don't want any interruptions. And sometimes that doesn't happen, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And can you just touch on the carbon monoxide versus smoke versus fire? Because there's all kinds of different things out there. I'm just curious what to do and how many to have.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, carbon monoxide obviously is known as a silent killer. You don't smell it. There's no smell. Let's just say you're running gas logs and your gas logs run off propane. If you have a propane leak, the mercaptan is an additive that the manufacturers put in that propane to let you know there's a leak. It's a rotten egg smell. It will stink your house up. And if you ever smell that smell, whether it's natural gas or propane, that mercaptan is put in there, that's there for a reason. So if you have a gas stove, your pilot light's lit, or you thought it was lit, now you find out it's not, and it's just pumping this gas in your house, you're going to get that rotten egg smell. Well, that is an explosion waiting to happen. Obviously, you want to air out the house, get everybody out of the house, make sure there's no ignition sources anywhere nearby. That's a really bad day that's about to happen. Carbon monoxide, you don't have a smell. There's no warning signs for it. Carbon monoxide builds up, and it's normally because once some type of gas appliance is not burning properly, and it's basically pumping carbon monoxide in there, which displaces oxygen. And once you displace oxygen, you become asphyxiated and you pass out, and eventually respiratory arrest and then cardiac arrest. So carbon monoxide detector, if you have any gas appliances whatsoever in your house, you need at least one carbon monoxide detector. You need one smoke alarm outside of every single area of the house, with every single bedroom, inside of every bedroom, and then every living room area just for that, for early warning. And then again, for smoke, that's your early warning is to get people out of there. Because by the time you smell it, you may not even know what you're smelling. You're probably going to be unconscious because of the stuff we have today. A lot of hydrocarbons and things in our furniture and carpet and everything else. They burn a lot different than 50 years ago when it was mainly cotton, and a lot of stuff was made of cotton and it didn't burn as readily. That's why our firefighters, the fires we have today are much hotter, they're much faster, and usually we get there in just enough time to deal with a collapse situation or something in the house because it's so hot, so fast. The survivability of anyone in a fire today is so low because of what we're making our products out of in there. So all good points and all very things that the listeners really need to look at. Check those smoke alarms, make sure they're up to date, get a carbon monoxide detector, and be very careful with your gas because that's a big deal. Generators kill so many people. They bring their generators in when power's out. Bring them in the house, and it's just pumping carbon monoxide and kill folks. That's huge. And then putting gasoline and kerosene heaters. I mean, it's easy mistake. I mean, you wouldn't think that would be that easy, but it is a very easy mistake, is to mistakenly put gasoline in a kerosene heater. They explode, they catch on fire, and they kill folks. So just basic things people can be safe of.
I had a question about like the wildfires. You ever been a part of wildfires? And like when we read about or see the news about these ones in California and all over the place, how complex? I mean, I get that they got to be challenging clearly to put out.
Sure.
But wouldn't there be a way that is it just a manpower? What would it be to stop it like within a week? Because it just seems like they're just never ending. And to me, with everything that we have today, is it just like we need 100,000 people to all go and, treat the fire? Or what do you think? Like, what are your thoughts on wildfires?
I've done a lot of training on wildfires, and I've got a lot of experience on wildfires. But I will tell you, an eastern United States wildfire is totally different than a western United States wildfire. You burn 5,000 acres in South Carolina, you got a much bigger situation on your hand than 5,000 acres in rural, Arizona or California or wherever it is. Now, they got some massive fires and they've got massive deaths and massive property loss. I'm not minimizing that. The problem on the eastern side is we have built in through development, suburban development. Everybody wants to live in the woods.
Right.
All right? You don't want to live on top of anybody. All right. A lot of folks love the neighborhoods and the houses on top of each other, and the nice asphalted driveways and all that. They love those things. But for the most part, when people move to South Carolina, they want 4 or 5 acres and they want them in the woods and they want to be away from people. Well, that works well and good until the woods catch on fire. And then you have no buffer areas to prevent that. So to answer your question, we train a little different in South Carolina because we basically have to dump a ton of resources very quickly anytime there's a large woods fire, because it could turn into a wildfire. We don't have the miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of woods. We've got our U.S. forests and state forests that are maintained, have a lot of forest area. Fort Jackson has a lot of forest area here, and people seem to think, we have those. Those areas are going away. We're developing just about all of these areas because so many people are moving.
Right.
So there's no buffer between the woods and all of these houses that we're building. You build a new subdivision, most of them are one way in and one way out.
Yeah.
Well, you got 40 houses and all of these people are trying to get out at the same time fire trucks are coming in, and you've got this one entrance. Those are things that fire chiefs are aware of, and we know that's a risk and a hazard that you have to plan your fire attack around in case that was to happen. So it is different. It is a different environment than from West Coast to East Coast, a lot of similarities, but also how we fight those fires are different. We really have to dump a lot of resources into that, and you're not going to pick up the phone and call for a airplane drop on a large wildfire in South Carolina. I mean, we may can eventually get one for something big. You may get a helicopter to do a drop, but you're not going to see these large planes come in for every wildfire. We have to handle it locally with our local Forest Service, with their bulldozers, with our forestry fire protection, your local fire departments with brush trucks and smaller trucks to get to them, because you just don't have the time. You can't wait. Look at Gatlinburg not that years ago. I mean, Gatlinburg was devastated. Look how many houses were lost, and people could not get out of there. Why? They built their houses in the woods, and when the woods catch on fire, there's nowhere to go.
Gatlinburg traffic is insane. I went there a month ago, and I can't believe how bad the traffic is in that area.
Imagine that, and you can Google it. You can Google videos, put the Gatlinburg wildfire, and you will see live video of people trying to get out of there with fire burning over their hoods as they're driving through. I mean, just shocking stuff, unbelievable stuff that now people are thinking about that, and they're building a buffer around their house, making sure they don't have wood piled up against their house. They don't keep pine straw on their roof to keep the straw off. A lot of preventative things you can do for that. But, man, if you live in the woods, you better be ready to evacuate quickly, because sometimes we can't, I don't care how many fire departments you have, you can't stop a raging wildfire, especially if it's wind driven. You pretty much have to decide, here's where we're going to start at this road, and we're going to set up, and we're going to try to stop it here. If you can't stop it there, you go to the next one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
had a couple little kid questions that I want to rapid fire at you. So how tall is the tallest ladder? Like from a truck, I guess, or are there any other things that don't come off a truck that you guys use that would be a ladder? Yeah,
32 feet is the tallest extendable ladder, so handheld ladder. Okay. So the three of us could grab a 32-footer, take it, throw it up. That's the highest commonly used ladder, very few exceptions. 100 feet is mainly what our platforms run and our trucks run. So whether it has a basket, we call a workable basket at the end, it's called a platform, or a stick, which has no basket, it's just a ladder that extends out. 100 foot is average. There is a 155-foot ladder truck. It's made, I believe it's a German-made product. I don't know of any here in South Carolina. There is one in Midway. I wish I could remember how long that truck is. We may have to Google that after we get off here, because I'm going to want to know now. But it's called the Reach of the Beach. I love that truck. It's called the Reach of the Beach. Yeah, it's in Midway, Pawleys Island, on the south side of the Grand Strand, Midway, but it's called the Reach of the Beach, and I think that was over 100 feet. It's a pretty significant length. It's the longest ladder truck in that area there. But yeah, you're limited. So I mean, a point you can get to with you is that also limits us how far we can go, to rescue people or whatever it may be. If you're on a water tower, we don't have a ladder truck tall enough to get you. We got to physically crawl it ourselves and go get you and lower you down with ropes. So that's why we have rope rescue training, rope rescue technicians, because there are times where we can't get to you on a ladder truck.
Should we call the fire department directly or 911?
It depends on the call. So if you need a smoke alarm, you call the fire department directly. That's a non-emergent issue. If your smoke alarm's chirping or whatever, you got a battery issue, something non-emergent, by all means, call the fire department. When in doubt, call 911. If you're not sure,
if it's a fire,
call them. If it is a fire, any type of emergency, you have a smell in your house, you got a gas smell in your house, or you smell something burning in your house, maybe an electrical socket sparking, whatever it may be, anything that you remotely think could be fire, an emergency, law enforcement, any type of medical emergency, anything like that, always call 911. Nice. Don't feel like, well, I'm not sure if this is an emergency or not. If that's the case, call 911. We'll figure that part out. So get them to come. But yeah, anything is non-emergent, then by all means, if you need an incident report after the fact for law enforcement, call the law enforcement agency or whatever it may be. But certainly don't hesitate to call 911. And
the fire department doesn't have like a 3-digit number. It would be just the
local department number. Okay. That's right. Every local department has a local landline that they go to.
How heavy is the equipment?
It depends on what we carry and depends on the call. So if it's a medical call, I'm carrying in a jump bag with oxygen, that type of stuff. You're looking 30, 35 pounds, that you're carrying in. Wow. If you're having a working structure fire, you put your turnout gear on, you're looking at 60 pounds. Dang. Putting all your turnout, your boots, your coat, your pants, all that has thermal protection. You're looking at $2,400 just for one ensemble. Wow. So for your helmet, your boots, your pants, your gloves, your jacket, all of that stuff. Then you add your air pack onto it as well, the air pack that we wear called SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus. You add that onto the backs now, depending on the manufacturer, another 30 to 50 pounds. And again, that's before you get wet. Right. Unfortunately, we deal with a lot of water in our business. So you get wet, and then when you get wet, it dumps it on even more.
Wow. How much water comes in the trucks? Does every truck that shows up have a certain amount of water, or were you guys looking for fire hydrants?
Always have a definitive amount of water on every truck. So a ladder truck could be totally dry, may not have a drop of water on it. It could be totally reliable on another truck or a hydrant pumping to it. Or you could have some that have 500 gallons of water. We have first out, there's different categories of trucks. So if it's a little small brush truck, may have 150, 200 gallons of water for little small fires, maybe up to 300. Our larger pumpers, 1,000. Usually 1,000 gallons of water is what your normal pumper carries. The pumper is usually the first arriving truck that actually pumps the water to the fire. Then you got your ladder truck that comes that may have an elevated stream. That pumper pumps water to the ladder truck. The ladder truck then pumps water there. And then we have what's called tenders, also referred to as tankers. They carry bulk water. Some of them have pumps on them, but they can carry up to 3,000, some even 5,000 gallons of water in your more rural areas. So that is from a logistical standpoint, you got to know what trucks you got coming, how much water they've got, if you got hydrants in the area that you're going to. Another misnomer of a lot of people is there are fire hydrants everywhere. There's not.
Right.
The fire department has to be prepared for hydrants and non-hydrant in area. So, if you got a domestic water supply and hydrant, you're probably pretty good. If you don't, you got to call for more resources to bring that water. So it's a pretty embarrassing thing when you got folks and you're showing up and you're fighting fire and you run out of water.
Yeah.
It can happen, especially the bigger fire, the bigger amount of water. But it can definitely happen. But that you got to be prepared for that.
And then what temperature are you guys protected up to? Like what could you walk in with all that gear and be safe?
The gear is protected for flash. So you're not supposed to be exposed. Our goal is not to go in and run into a burning building in the fire.
Yeah.
We have lines for that and we flow water and we basically put the fire out as we go. So we should not be walking through fire actually going in. Now there's some exceptions to that. If somebody's trapped and it's a survivable space and we're trying to get to them, then you do what you have to do to get to them. But for all intents and purposes, we're putting the fire out as we get to it. The protection of that gear is for a flash. So you're looking at 1,200 degrees of a flash.
Just a
coming
quick-
in. Just a quick flash, what they call a flashover, enough to you can turn around and get out of there. Because I've been in fires, I've been all the way down on my chest, zero visibility. I can't see my hand in front of my face. I'm following the wall. I prefer a right-hand search, but you can do right or left. But you got to remember where you start. You're following and you're feeling for people in the dark. We have thermal imaging cameras now, which has been a godsend. So we can take them and kind of scan each room as we go through, and it picks up heat indicators of bodies. So it really sees for us through the smoke. But that could go out and die. And if that's what you're using and the battery goes dead, you're in trouble. You get disoriented. So it's challenging. But basically that gear is not really for constant fire exposure. It's for that flash in case something was to happen to us.
Yeah.
We had to get out of there in a hurry.
Yeah.
I had a pretty serious scenario at the fire academy a few weeks ago. It's all training, so everything is controlled, but the wind kind of turned on us. I'll show you the video before we leave today, but it was a pretty significant, intense fire. We used what's called tech flame there. It's a souped up diesel fuel, and the flames actually turned. The wind took the flame and blew it on top of the trainees. It was an industrial class that was training there, and ended up burning a significant amount of their gear. It melted some of the side of our fire truck, some of the plastic light covers that was on the fire truck. It can do a lot of damage. Folks don't understand until you experience it just how significant fire is and how damaging it is. So we do the best we can to be safe, but in the reality, it's a risk. I mean, everything we go is a risk. And I think that's what's cool about fire service. For anybody wanting to know about getting in the fire service, that's the coolest thing about it is you never know. When that pager goes off, you never know. Every call is different. You're not, thank you for those that make the same widget every day. I appreciate it because I'm probably using that widget, but I'm not the kind of person that can just go to a company and make the same widget every single day. I want something dynamic. I want something changing. And that's the great thing about all public safety. But speaking specifically on fire rescue, it's awesome because it's just a different call every day.
Can you just touch on 9/11 for a little bit? Because you were a firefighter before and then you're a firefighter for a long time after.
Yes.
I'm curious how it changed at least the South Carolina firefighting community.
Yeah, it as a community, not the firefighting community, but as society, we changed for about a month and a half. I mean, it really, everybody appreciated life more. We were all under attack and we knew it was an intentional attack. We saw all of those firefighters, 343 firefighters perished on 9/11. Of course, all these other citizens and all those that passed from that. Many have passed since then that was working in public safety and in citizens that was exposed to that. So we see the significance of that. A lot of lessons learned from 9/11, from the communication system that we use to the incident command system that we use now, command and control. A lot of things that we use now today came from 9/11. And not only 9/11, we have the Charleston 9, the 9 firefighters that died in the Sofa Superstore fire in Charleston, South Carolina. Those 9 deaths, again, learning from a lot of things. We learn. A lot of our fire codes come from, and we say fire codes are written in blood. A lot of people cannot stand fire codes when we say that exit light's got to be lit. You got to have these doors where they're not blocked. If it's an exit, you can't have them blocked. All these things, people get frustrated with that. But the reality is those codes are there to protect people so we don't have repeats of things that happen in a lot of these major events and these issues. But from 9/11, it was a wake-up call. And I think we saw a lot of people come, just like military, a lot of people came into public safety after 9/11 because they saw the significance of what public safety did. They saw those firefighters and how brave they were and what they did. They're like, I want to do that. And I think our recruitments went up. Since then, of course, 2001, here we are in 2023. A lot of things have changed now. I think a lot of that passion has went away. A lot of that zeal and enthusiasm for what we do has gone away because, again, we've done such a good job of kind of minimizing a lot of the fire side. But I'm going to tell you, if you can't breathe, and we show up and we give you oxygen, we're much more helpful to you than we are sitting out there with you, getting your cat out of a tree. You love your fire department when they show up, 20 minutes before the ambulance gets there and we're giving you oxygen. You want that desperately. So compassion fatigue, again, I think some of that may be coming in since 9/11 too, where we were really on fire and passionate and we appreciated our first responders, that zeal, enthusiasm. A lot of grant money was obviously out there. A lot of that grant money's gone now. We've kind of gone back to, September 10th, 2001 for a lot of different areas.
And then can you touch on your consulting company a little bit? We haven't got into that at all, but I just want you to say what you do, and if someone wants to reach out to you for it, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's probably the least important of anything we've talked about here. But since I retired, I did start Palmetto Executive Services, it's an LLC, to basically do consulting. You know, I've got 31 years in the fire service. Again, I'm still volunteering, 27 of those in government service, you know, public service. And man, I hated to walk away from that. And I said my ideal job I want to be is one of those drivers for the car dealerships. You know, I'm retired
like
now.
The courtesy guys?
Yes. I'm like, man, that's no stress, you know. My courtesy driver's probably going to kill me listening to this driving up down the road, but no stress, you know. It's like, man, I would love that, you know, and do nothing but deliver cars. You know, I love driving. I love driving all over our state and our country. You know, I just love that. But I said, you know, that'd be a waste, you know, to have all that time and experience. So basically, I'm there to help fire departments, maybe a new fire chief starting, need some kind of help on what it is to be a fire chief, what policies, procedures are, managerial studies, grant help. You know, if they got FEMA grants they're writing. I'm on the panel that grades a lot of the FEMA grants. So I've got some experience in that as well. But anything from a consulting point where I can say, you know, what are you going through? What can I come in and help you with and do that? ChiefDennisRay.com. I think that's pretty simple, right?
Yeah, perfect.
ChiefDennisRay.com, two N's in Dennis and Ray, R-A-Y. So do that. ChiefDennisRay@gmail.com is my email. So pretty simple, keeping it pretty simple and just seeing what's out there and seeing what's next. So I'm not in any hurry to jump right back into anything, you know. I wasn't thinking of retirement back when I was dispatching, but I'm thankful it started then because that 27 years seemed like it was slowly going by years ago, but now I'm here and it's like, man, where did those years go? So just want to be able to help people still. You know, I still do the volunteer gig, but there's agency out there that need folks like me to come in and do managerial studies or some advisement, strategic planning, something that I can use this experience to help them and make me a little money on the side too to pay my house off earlier. That'd be great.
Perfect. All right. Well, we appreciate all your time. Thank you. This was amazing.
Thanks for your service.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite. And like I say, you got some fantastic speakers y'all have had on here. So excited to be one of them.
Cool.
Yeah.
Here
We're here for the health of it.
for the health of it.